When the academician Alexander Alexandrovich Mikulin uttered his famous words, "A person dies not from disease, but from laziness," he challenged our conventional understanding of health, aging, and death. The statement is stark, even provocative, yet behind its simplicity lies a profound truth. Mikulin was more than just a scientist. He was one of those who proved, through personal example, that age and illness do not have to dictate our final chapter. He lived a long and active life, constantly exploring the nature of the human body and the power of the will. He saw thousands surrender not to their ailments, but to their own passivity, indifference, and inaction. He did not see aging as a curse, but as the result of accumulated idleness. That is why he insisted, the primary cause of the body's decay is laziness. Not an acute illness, not a virus, not age, but the systematic avoidance of movement, the refusal of discipline, and the absence of inner motivation. When a person stops moving, they literally begin to die. When they stop fighting, their body stops resisting. When they replace will with comfort, life leaves them long before their final breath. And now, step by step, we will explore why, according to Mikulin, it is laziness that kills a person prematurely, and what truths lie behind this simple yet powerful phrase. Truth 1. Laziness shuts down the body's vital mechanisms. The human body is not merely a collection of organs, but a complex, living system where movement is the main source of energy and self-regulation. Alexander Mikulin asserted, "Our body is designed such that movement is a condition for life, while stillness is a preparation for death." He believed that laziness, as a state of inaction, leads to the gradual degradation of the entire organism. When a person forgoes movement, it is as if they press pause on all vital processes, from blood circulation to metabolism. Mikulin particularly emphasized the role of the second circulation, the microcirculation in the capillaries, which is directly dependent on muscle activity. Without regular movement, this system begins to stagnate and the body loses its ability to regenerate. He said, "Laziness turns off the body's pumps, the muscles. Without their work, blood no longer fully bathes the organs, meaning the body ceases to nourish itself from within. This is where decay begins. And this decay is not external, but internal, slow, almost imperceptible. People attribute fatigue, apathy, poor sleep, headaches, and heart weakness to age or stress. But more often than not, these are the consequences of elementary physical inactivity, that is, laziness. Mikulin developed his own system of vibrational gymnastics, the essence of which lies in short but regular impulses of movement. He claimed that even light but constant muscle stimulation could restore vitality. He did not believe in rest. He would say, "An organism at rest begins to rot." It sounds harsh, but the truth is that without movement, a slow death of tissues begins. Lymph stagnates and the blood vessels and heart muscle weaken. Laziness is not just the absence of physical activity. It is a mindset without a goal, a will without application, and a body without a task. That is why Mikulin called laziness enemy number one. He stressed that even with chronic diseases, movement can improve one's condition, while inaction only makes it worse. He wrote, "Any illness is not the end if you keep moving. The end begins when you lie down and never get up again." In essence, a person can engage their body even in old age, if only they have not allowed laziness to conquer their spirit. The scientist was convinced that activity is the only path to longevity. He urged people not to wait for the right to rest upon retirement, but to perceive old age as the start of a new phase of movement. He called old age a golden time for renewal, if approached with discipline. And you must start small, with morning bends, with walking, with foot movements, with breathing. He said, 10 minutes of movement every hour is better than 1 hour of sport a week. This is the philosophy of conscious movement, where every effort is a drop in the cup of life. Thus, laziness doesn't just relax the body, it shuts down the very mechanisms on which survival depends. And if a person does not fight laziness daily, they will sooner or later face not a disease, but an internal collapse. Laziness is the silent switch that turns off life, and the first step to overcoming it is to recognize that every movement today extends your tomorrow. Truth 2. Illnesses do not kill if a person does not surrender. Academician Mikulin was no dreamer. He was an engineer, a thinker, a practical scientist for whom the human body was a most complex machine, capable of self-repair if its operating mode was correctly set. He said, "Illness is a signal, not a sentence. If you can still move a finger, it means you can win." That is why he believed that it is not the disease itself that takes a person, but the internal decision to stop fighting. According to Mikulin, most diseases develop in the body against a backdrop of inaction, lethargy, and an internal sense of defeat. He wrote that the body can endure a great deal if the person within has the will to live. Ancient physicians and modern cardiologists alike would agree with him on this. The heart, the liver, the joints, the vessels, they all lose their tone when a person stops caring for themselves and sinks into apathy. Diseases are merely the consequences, not the cause of the fall. He particularly emphasized the power of one's inner mindset. In his works and lectures, Mikulin wrote, "A mindset focused on victory is half the cure." This is not just a beautiful metaphor. It is a real biological mechanism. When a person is active, when they exercise, even through force of will, their brain releases endorphins, blood circulation improves, and the immune system is activated. All of this lessens the impact of the disease. But if a person lies down, stares at the ceiling, and complains, the disease gains power. In his system of self-restoration, Mikulin stressed that even with serious diagnoses, one should not cease movement. He wrote, "When I feel I'm getting sick, I don't go to bed. I go for a walk. I provoke the body to remember it's alive." He believed in the power of light exercise, walks, breathing practices, simple movements, and he asserted that the body is capable of fighting off infections if only the person does not cede control to laziness. He also argued against over-coddling and excessive rest at the first symptoms. He wrote, "Resting too early is a trap. You decide you can do nothing, and by this, you weaken yourself even more. The disease doesn't get stronger, your resistance gets weaker." This philosophy has found confirmation in modern science. Studies show that active people tolerate chronic illnesses more easily, recover faster from surgeries, and suffer from complications less often. This isn't magic, it's physiology. Mikulin simply knew it before others. He gave examples from life. Soldiers wounded in war often survived not because of medicine, but because of the desire to get up and walk. Elderly people in villages who walked several kilometers every day lived longer than urban retirees sitting in front of the television. People who tried to do exercises even when sick recovered faster. That is why Mikulin repeated, "Disease is not the end. The end is laziness." If a person keeps moving, even through force, they activate a power within them for which there is no medicine. And conversely, if they stop, even with a mild illness, they give the disease power over them. Therefore, the real danger is not the diagnosis. The real danger is internal capitulation, the refusal to act, the surrender of will and faith. Diseases fear those who keep walking, and laziness is the door through which disease enters. Ana Po said. Truth 3. Prevention through movement is stronger than treatment. Alexander Mikulin asserted, "The best treatment is the one that was never needed." This thought is not just beautifully phrased, it overturns our conventional attitude toward health. We are accustomed to going to the doctor when we get sick. We remember our body when it fails. We buy medicine when we already feel pain. But Mikulin insisted, the body should not be an object of rescue. It should be a partner with whom we work every day, and the main tool for this work is movement. He said, "Prevention is not a pill or an injection. It is one step, then another, and then 10,000. For Mikulin, every movement was an act of life. He believed that even the simplest physical effort triggers hundreds of internal processes. Blood supply improves, cells are saturated with oxygen, the lymphatic system is activated, the load on the heart is reduced, and brain function improves. That is why he developed his famous vibrational gymnastics, a method of light but constant stimulation of the body. Its goal was to provide a second heart for the veins, micro movements that help pump blood back upward, relieving the vessels and improving overall condition. Mikulin said, "If you help your blood flow freely every day, you lengthen your life." He emphasized, "It is not necessary to spend hours in sports, run marathons, or go to the gym. The main thing is not to let the body stagnate." He was a proponent of small but daily efforts. For example, standing up every hour to walk a little, taking the stairs, doing bends and neck circles. Any action is better than inaction. Mikulin warned, When you sit without moving, you are not just resting, you are beginning the process of destruction. This is especially true for blood vessels. Blood stagnation in the veins leads to varicose veins, thrombosis, and strokes. And all of this can be prevented with simple movements. But people wait for symptoms, while prevention requires a different mindset, a mindset of maturity and responsibility. He compared the human body to an aircraft engine. If you don't start the motor regularly, it will rust. So too the body. Even a perfect system without movement becomes a threat to itself. He wrote, "Move while you can. If you do not walk today, you may not be able to tomorrow." This warning sounds harsh, but it is precisely what could save thousands of lives. This is especially important for the elderly. Mikulin stressed, age is not a reason to stop. On the contrary, in old age, movement becomes the only way to preserve clarity of mind, flexibility of joints, and a healthy heart. He said, if you want to live long, move as if you were young. He himself followed his own exercises until his last day, writing, working, and walking. Prevention through movement is a philosophy of active participation in one's own life. It is the decision to live consciously without waiting for disaster. It is the belief that every morning can be the beginning of healing if you are ready to stand up and take at least one step. This is how a person reclaims power over their body, not through a hospital, but through will. Mikulin wrote, "Life does not demand much, it demands movement. Like a river that flows, it does not stagnate, and if a person wants to live long, happily, and actively, they must make movement not an episode, but the rhythm of their existence." Prevention is the choice to be alive every day, not to fight death when it's already too late. Truth 4. Laziness is not fatigue, but an absence of will. Alexander Mikulin saw laziness not as physiological fatigue, but as a dangerous spiritual state, an internal consent to degradation. He said, "Fatigue comes after an action. Laziness comes before it. It is not tiredness, it is a refusal to live." These words expose the root of the problem. People confuse true physical fatigue, which arises after labor, with the idleness that stems from a lack of meaning and will. Mikulin emphasized, laziness does not come from the outside, it grows from within. It is a psychological state that suppresses the impulse to move, the desire to resist, and the will for self-development. He said, laziness is the state where you have already surrendered in advance. You haven't even tried, but you've already decided it's not worth it. Therein lies its destructive power. It quietly masquerades as rest, but in reality, it destroys both body and soul. He sharply criticized the pursuit of constant comfort. Mikulin asserted, comfort is a trap if it becomes the norm. A person accustomed to tranquility stops developing. They no longer step out of their comfort zone, and as soon as the need arises to make an effort, they hide in laziness. It's like a muscle that hasn't been tensed for a long time. It loses its strength. The same is true of the will. If you don't train it, you lose it. The will, in Mikulin's view, is the foundation of health. He wrote, without will, the body disintegrates. He did not believe in genetics as a sentence. He believed in character and was convinced that it is the strength of will, the ability to force oneself to get up, to walk, to do gymnastics even when one doesn't want to, that can reverse the course of disease and slow down aging. He himself followed this principle, not asking himself, do I want this? But rather, do I need this for life? He described how he would force himself to move in the mornings when his body still resisted. But after a few minutes of exercise, energy would appear, and with it, joy. He called this overcoming inertia. The first moment of movement is always difficult, but it is this moment that separates the strong from the weak. The strong one is the one who takes a step despite internal sabotage. Mikulin identified laziness as the main cause of premature aging. He wrote, laziness ages you faster than time. A young person lying on a sofa can be weaker and older than an 80-year-old who walks and does gymnastics every day. Aging is not just wrinkles, it is the loss of the desire to live actively, and laziness is precisely the force that takes away this desire. He believed that laziness can only be conquered through action, not through motivation, not through inspiration, but through the habit of doing. He said, first you force yourself, then the body begins to ask for it. This is the principle of forming a new way of life. As soon as a person begins to act, even a little, they change their internal chemistry, the brain stops associating movement with pain and a positive inertia arises. Mikulin said, "Every day we have a choice, to surrender or to take a step. And only a person with will is capable of choosing the second option daily." Laziness seems soft, but it kills imperceptibly. First, a person postpones a walk, then their exercises, then they stop visiting friends, then they lie down all day, and then they lose interest in life. An absence of will is not just a weakness, it is the beginning of the end. Because without will, a person cannot protect themselves from disease, from despondency, or from old age. That is why Mikulin taught, will is a muscle that must be trained every day. And as long as you are able to get up and take a step, you are alive. Truth 5. Laziness begets apathy, apathy begets depression, and depression begets disease. Alexander Mikulin warned, "Physical laziness is only the beginning of a destructive process. It is always followed by something greater, spiritual emptiness, a loss of interest in life, an inner silence where there are no longer any aspirations or desires." He wrote, "Laziness is not just an absence of movement, it is the start of a chain reaction that leads a person to self-destruction. The first step is the refusal to act. A person increasingly chooses rest over activity, postpones tasks, stops caring for their body, and loses the habits that sustain their energy. It seems to them that they are simply tired, but in reality, apathy is setting in, a state of indifference in which the soul loses its taste for life." Mikulin said, "Apathy is a disease of the body that has spread to the spirit. There is no pain in it, but there is a slow disappearance. In a state of apathy, a person stops finding joy even in small things. The sun does not please them, books do not interest them, and they do not want to see people. They stop dreaming because they no longer have the impulse to act. Everything seems superfluous." Mikulin emphasized that it is at this moment that critical changes occur in the body. The immune system weakens, heart function deteriorates, and the hormonal system begins to fail. He wrote, "Apathy is a void into which diseases seep. It is on this soil that depression blossoms, a profound state of lifelessness in which a person feels that everything is meaningless. And when this state takes hold, physical health begins to crumble, no longer from external causes, but from internal self-destruction." Mikulin believed that depression is not just a weakness of the soul, but the result of accumulated inaction and a refusal to engage in an inner struggle. He said, "If a person does not take a step for a long time, they forget how to move." This applies not only to the body, but also to thought and feeling. A person accustomed to doing nothing loses the skill of living. They no longer believe they can change anything. Their mind sinks into negativity and their body into painful reactions. And then diseases not only arise, they become part of a way of life. Mikulin stressed, "The key to a way out is in action, even if minimal." He wrote, "Start small, with one smile, with one step, with one breath." He himself fought apathy with movement. When he felt weak, he did not lie down, he walked. When he felt despondent, he did exercises. He believed that action brings back the feeling of being alive, movement brings back meaning, even if at first it seems that all is lost. He especially warned the elderly against inaction. In his opinion, it is in mature age that apathy can destroy a person faster than diseases. He wrote, "Old age is not a time to rest. It is a time to protect oneself from internal decay. Laziness in old age is not rest, but voluntary fading. And only the will to act can stop this process." He advised using simple techniques: change the scenery, set small goals for the day, be outdoors more often, practice breathing, listen to music that lifts the spirit. These all seem like small things, but they are the steps back to life. He said, "The soul returns when the body begins to move." Therefore, laziness is not just a habit, it is the beginning of spiritual death. Apathy, depression, and disease are links in a single chain that begins with the choice to do nothing. And only the person who consciously breaks this chain can preserve their health. Mikulin believed that every action, no matter how small, is a vote for life. And as long as you are voting for movement, you are still living. Truth 6. The example of centenarians and their active lives. Alexander Mikulin never limited himself to theory. He believed in the power of example. For him, more important than any medical conclusion was observing those who had lived long, active, and lucid lives. He said, Do you want to know the secret to longevity? Look at those who live the longest. Not in pharmacies, but on the streets, in the villages, in motion. That is why he studied the habits of centenarians with special attention, trying to find a common denominator in their way of life. And he found it: activity. According to Mikulin, people who passed the age of 90 and retained their mental clarity always had one thing in common: they did not sit idle. They moved, worked, helped others, and took care of themselves. He pointed out that none of them had a habit of lying on the sofa or sitting for hours in silence, staring at a single point. They lived, and it was life in motion that preserved their health. He cited examples of elderly people from villages who, despite their advanced age, walked several kilometers every day, worked in their gardens, breathed fresh air, and never lost interest in what was happening around them. They didn't just exist, they participated in life. This wasn't sport or fitness or medical exercise. It was a living necessity to feel needed, to be in motion, to be in one's body. Mikulin said, "Old age does not arrive when the years come, but when movement leaves." He noted that many centenarians never gave up work. Even after retirement, they found something to do: handicrafts, crafts, reading, caring for nature, looking after others. This is what kept the inner fire burning in them. He wrote, "When a person is needed by themselves and others, they live longer." He also mentioned scientists and writers who wrote, researched, and thought until their final days. One of his favorite examples was Leo Tolstoy, who continued to write and walk actively until a ripe old age, or the academician Pavlov, who worked until his last hours. These examples inspired Mikulin, and he believed that it is not age that constrains, but a lack of will. He paid special attention to Eastern cultures. Mikulin studied Japanese and Chinese methods of longevity and saw the same pattern: daily morning exercises, active breathing, walks, mental flexibility, and physical practices. He called it the philosophy of a gentle life in a strong body. The secret was not in medicine, but in discipline. He also often repeated, activity should be as much a habit as brushing your teeth. That is, not a temporary campaign, but an integrated part of one's being. He urged people not to wait for problems to appear, but to live in such a way that the body does not forget what it means to be alive. He himself followed this, rising early, doing his gymnastics, walking, working, writing, and not allowing himself to switch off, either mentally or physically. Mikulin asserted that even those who began to move in their mature years drastically improved their well-being. He wrote, "Age is not a reason to stop, it is a reason to accelerate, so as not to fall off the tracks of life." His own example is the best confirmation of these words. He worked on himself until the end of his life and lived to be over 80, remaining active, clear-minded, and strong in spirit. This approach is also confirmed by modern science. Studies show that elderly people who take at least a 30-minute walk every day have a lower risk of dementia, improved heart function, and a better mood. Apathy and illness come to those who cease to live actively, while movement, on the contrary, is a biological antidepressant and an antidote to old age. Mikulin repeated, "To live is to move. As long as you are in motion, you are alive. You are a person. You are in the present." That is why he believed in the power of a living example, not in pills, but in the legs, in posture, in breath, in aspiration. And if anyone wants to become a centenarian, they should not read about health, but get up and walk. This is how a new life begins, with a simple movement forward. Truth 7. Laziness as a form of mental slavery. Alexander Mikulin understood that laziness is not just physical lethargy. It is a deep, internal slavery into which a person sinks without even noticing. He said, "A person enslaved by laziness does not live. They are slowly dying, allowing habit to control them." This is where its true threat lies. Laziness deprives a person of freedom, forcing them to settle for less, to refuse effort, and to believe that they can change nothing. Mikulin emphasized that laziness is not the result of fatigue, as is commonly thought, but the result of a psychological mindset. I don't need anything. And this mindset does not arise spontaneously. It is formed under the influence of comfort, fear of effort, and a lack of meaning. He wrote, "When a person loses their purpose, they stop moving, and when they stop moving, they lose their freedom." Laziness becomes the jailer. It creates an illusion of safety around a person. Don't strain yourself. Don't try. don't risk. But in reality, it robs them not only of their body, but also of their mind. They stop thinking clearly, fear change, and lose flexibility. And the most terrible part is that they begin to defend their cage. They justify it. I'm fine as I am. I don't have time. I'm too old. It's already too late. These phrases are the chains that hold them captive. Mikulin wrote, "The most terrible cage is the one in which you are comfortable." A person accustomed to inaction ceases to see anything greater beyond its walls. They no longer believe they can be strong, energetic, active, and therein lies the tragedy. They voluntarily renounce the strength that God and nature invested in them from birth. This mental slavery is especially destructive in mature age. People who retire often fall into this trap. They believe that now they can do nothing. And it is precisely at this moment that the body begins to fail, because it is not age that kills a person, but the feeling that everything is already behind them. Mikulin asserted, "Until your last day, you can be your own master, but only if you do not hand the keys over to laziness." He believed in the power of a daily victory over oneself. He wrote, "Every morning you wake up, and you are a slave if you make no effort, and you are free if you surpass even a little of yesterday's I don't want to." This is not melodrama, but a practical method, because every day that a person does their exercises, goes for a walk, chooses action instead of complaint, they break their chains. He warned, "Laziness is an enemy that acts silently. It does not scream or demand, it simply coaxes, stay. And if a person listens to this voice day after day, year after year, they become a slave. And then comes illness, then loneliness, then emptiness, and the person does not understand how they got there." Mikulin offered a powerful antidote, awareness and discipline. He wrote, "Do not give yourself a choice. Do what is necessary. Then you will become free." Freedom is not the ability to do nothing. Freedom is the strength to do what is necessary, even when you don't want to. And laziness disappears where will appears. He also emphasized, one's environment either strengthens or destroys the power of the spirit. If a person is among the lazy, they quickly weaken themselves. But if they are near those who move, develop, and fight, they awaken. Mikulin said, "Laziness is contagious, but so is will. Choose whom to listen to." Therefore, he believed, laziness is a form of mental slavery, but everyone has the key. That key is action. In rising in the morning, in cold water, in movement, in the step taken through reluctance. And as long as a person takes that step, they are free, they are alive, they are victorious. Truth 8. Conscious movement as the path to self-restoration. Alexander Mikulin said, "Movement in itself is not yet life. Life begins when movement becomes conscious." In these words lies his deep faith that it is conscious, directed action that can restore a person's health, youth, and even interest in life. He emphasized, the human body possesses colossal resources for self-restoration, but they are activated not by pills, but by the effort of will and rhythmic, living movement. He created his famous method of vibrational gymnastics not as just another set of exercises, but as a form of a person's conscious participation in their own biology. He wrote, "Every step, every movement made with an understanding of its purpose awakens the healing power within the body." This idea was ahead of its time. Today we call it neuroplasticity, stem cell activation, restoration through blood flow and oxygen. But Mikulin knew this long before science did. The body renews itself when we engage it with our minds. He did not believe in mindless running. He believed in simple, calibrated actions, rising up on your toes and then dropping down sharply. The vibration from this exercise helps blood move from the bottom up. Taking a walk after a meal, this aids digestion. Lying on a flat surface and doing breathing exercises, this relieves fatigue from the heart. He knew that the body is a system that needs not shock, but gentle, intelligent stimulation. Mikulin wrote, "The brain tires not from thoughts, but from the body's inaction." He noticed that when a person sits all day, they not only weaken their muscles, but also overload their psyche. But when they start to move, their mood improves, their thoughts clear, and a sense of strength appears. That is why he linked physical movement with spiritual harmony. He was convinced that conscious activity is a form of prayer with the body. It is a way of saying to life, "I choose to be alive." Even with illnesses, even in old age, even with weakness, movement remains accessible to everyone. He wrote, "If you cannot walk, move your fingers. If you cannot move your fingers, move your eyes. The main thing is not to stop." This is not a metaphor, it is a call to life. In mature age, when people most often fall into passivity, he urged, on the contrary, to increase attention to the body, to do gymnastics not out of habit, but with gratitude, to walk not mechanically, but feeling how the leg works. He said, as long as you feel movement in your body, you are alive. As long as you not only move, but understand why, you are regenerating. He also noted that conscious movement changes the perception of time. People who practice his approach do not live in a hurry, they live in a rhythm, and rhythm is health. The heart, the breath, the step, everything becomes synchronized. In this harmonious rhythm, sleep is restored, anxiety disappears, blood pressure normalizes, and irritability vanishes. And all this without medicine, only through attentive, gentle movement. Mikulin often said, "A miracle is not magic, it is discipline plus attention." He saw how elderly people who did simple gymnastics every day regained strength in their legs, improved their memory, and began to see and hear better. They returned to life not through clinics, but through the power of their own will. He saw how people after heart attacks, thanks to his method, could walk again without shortness of breath. He was an opponent of extremes, neither overload nor complete rest. He believed that excessive zeal is the other side of laziness, and the truth lies in balance, in simple but daily rituals of movement, in steps taken with love for oneself, in a minute of stretching before bed, in a conscious morning exercise, in a gentle reconnection with the body. Therefore, he taught, movement is not a punishment or an obligation, but a gift that must be accepted with respect. And everyone who begins to move not out of habit, but with attention and gratitude, will start the process of healing. He said, conscious movement is the bridge between a sick body and a healthy spirit. And this bridge is worth building every day, step by step, without fuss, but with the determination to live. A person does not die from age, they die from ceasing to fight. They do not perish from diseases. They surrender to them when laziness becomes the habitual state of their soul. This is the truth Alexander Mikulin tried to convey his entire life. He did not offer miracle pills. He did not speak of magical procedures. He spoke of the fact that we always have a choice, and that choice begins with a simple step. To stand up, to move, to breathe in, to make a movement toward life. In all his works, Mikulin proved that laziness is not rest, but the beginning of the end. That movement is not sport, but a form of survival, a form of healing, a form of gratitude to the body. He said, "A person who moves even weakly lives. The one who lies down awaiting a miracle is dying." That is why he considered it his duty to remind us, the body can be restored, the spirit can be awakened, life can begin anew, if only the person themselves does not refuse this path. Today, when millions suffer from apathy, depression, fatigue, and illness, it is especially important to return to his philosophy. We are not powerless, we are not weak. We have simply forgotten that every morning is a chance, that every movement is a vote for life, that every step taken with faith and awareness is not just an action, but an affirmation. I am alive, and I choose to live. So ask yourself right now, how many times today have you done something for your body? How many times have you chosen movement over rest? How many times have you told yourself, I can do more? If you haven't started, begin. Not tomorrow, not on Monday, not in the new year, but right now. Stand up, walk around, breathe deeper, move your fingers, stretch, reconnect with yourself. As Mikulin said, as long as you are in motion, death is powerless over you. If this text has inspired you, share it with those who need strength. Write in the comments what simple movements and habits help you maintain health and clarity. Support our work with a like, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss other important and useful materials. Your activity helps us create more meaningful, deep, and helpful content. Thank you for your attention, and remember, life is in motion.